us to use our eyes. And he was especially evangelical about this message because he was losing his sight. He wanted us to look and to ask basic questions of objects. What is it? How is it made? Why was it made? How is it used? And these were important lessons to me when I subsequently became a professional art historian. My kind of eureka moment came a few years later when I was studying the art of the courts of Northern Europe. And of course, it was very much discussed in terms of the paintings and the sculptures and the architecture of the day. But as I began to read historical documents and contemporary descriptions, I found there was a kind of a missing component. For everywhere, I came across descriptions of tapestries. Tapestries were ubiquitous between the Middle Ages and really well into the 18th century. And it was pretty apparent why. Tapestries were portable. You could roll them up, send them ahead of you, and in the time it took to hang them up, you could transform a cold, dank interior into a richly colored setting. Tapestries effectively provided a vast canvas on which the patrons of the day could depict the heroes with whom they wanted to be associated, or even themselves. And in addition to that, tapestries were hugely expensive. They required scores of highly skilled weavers working over extended periods of time with very expensive materials, the wools, the silks, even gold and silver thread. So all in all, in an age when the visual image of any kind was rare, tapestries were an incredibly potent form of propaganda. Well, I became a tapestry historian. In due course, I ended up as a curator at the Metropolitan Museum because I saw the Met as one of the few places where I could organize really big exhibitions about the subject I cared so passionately about. And in about 1997, the then director, Philippe de Montebello, gave me the go-ahead to organize an exhibition for 2002. We normally have these very long lead-in times. It wasn't straightforward. It's no longer a question of chucking a tapestry in the back of a car. They have to be wound on huge rollers, shipped in oversized freighters. Some of them were so big, we had to get them into the museum, we had to take them up the great steps at the front. We thought very hard about how to present this unknown subject to a modern audience. The dark colors to set off the colors that remained in objects that were often faded. The placing of lights to bring out the silk and the gold thread. The labeling. You know, we live in an age where we're so used to television images and photographs, a one-hit image. These were big, complex things, often almost like cartoons with multiple narratives. We had to draw our audience in, get them to slow down, to explore the objects. There was a lot of skepticism. On the opening night, I overheard one of the senior members of staff saying, "This is going to be a bomb." But in reality, in the course of the coming weeks and months, hundreds of thousands of people came to see the show. The exhibition was designed to be an experience, and tapestries are hard to reproduce in photographs. So I want you to use your imaginations, thinking of these wall-high objects, some of them 10 meters wide, depicting lavish court scenes with courtiers and dandies who look quite at home in the pages of the fashion press today. Thick woods with hunters crashing through the undergrowth in pursuit of wild boars and deer. Violent battles with scenes of fear and heroism. I remember taking my son's school class. He was 8 at the time. And all the little boys, they kind of, they were little boys. And then the thing that caught their attention was in one of the hunting scenes, there was a dog pooping in the foreground, kind of an in-your-face joke by the artist. I know you can just imagine them. But it brought it alive to them. I think they suddenly saw that these weren't just old, faded tapestries. These were images of the world in the past. And it was the same for our audience. And for me, as a curator, I felt proud. I felt I'd shifted the needle a little. Through this experience that could only be created in a museum, I'd opened up the eyes of my audience, historians, artists, press, the general public, to the beauty of this lost medium. A few years later, I was invited to be the director of the museum. And after I got over that, who me, the tapestry geek, I don't wear a tie, I realized, in fact, I believe passionately in that curated museum experience. We live in an age of ubiquitous information and sort of just add water expertise. But there's nothing that compares with the presentation of significant objects in a well-told narrative, what the curator does, the interpretation of a complex, esoteric subject in a way that retains the integrity of the subject, but unpacks it for a general audience. And that, to me, today is now the challenge and the fun of my job, supporting the vision of my curators, whether it's an exhibition of samurai swords, early Byzantine artifacts, Renaissance portraits, or the show we heard mentioned earlier, the McQueen show,